Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Saturday, November 22nd, 2025. And England is also paying for health benefits and other benefits for migrants. Seems like a locksteppy thing to do, right? Very, very interesting situation going on in England. And again, it seems analogous. There's a lot of similarities between right now and COVID, except the illness is an invasion. And what the governments are doing is spending money on foreigners and not spending money on our own country. Foreign wars, sure, foreigners here, sure, foreigners to spend time in hotels, yes, for food, yes, all sorts of money, but not for Canadian citizens. We have Canadian citizens who are homeless, and the encampments are okay. Certain areas you can have an encampment. This is the government helping. It just seems super duper weird. And again, similar things happening in England. I can't help but notice this pattern. New SAB planes, but what is the economic impact that it will have? The United States has noticed the openings of this deal between Canada and whoever makes SAB Switzerland, and they're looking on with interest because Canada might not like what happens next, according to the things that I'll show you today. X paused the display of where the accounts are because turns out there's a lot of people scamming, a lot of people pretending they're Americans when they're sure not Americans, right? So that's interesting and uncomfortable. And well, I'll show you all that controversy. So that rollout's been stopped. 80% increase in bureaucracy costs. Really? Yeah, over the last 10 years, that's a lot of money going down the drain, right? And so we're on the hook for it. Chrystia Freeland update. I was asking if she's going to remain an MP when she becomes the CEO of the Rhodes Scholar Fund or whatever it is. And yes, she will. And the job is in the United Kingdom. Can we just get a job in the United Kingdom and work in Canada now? Is that something that like regular people can do? Because that's what Chrystia Freeland's doing. So that's super weird. And so there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. Oh, I'm actually not even on the right one. Now we are. First, we got to start with economic grab bag of governance, J.D. Vance, the United States, trade, all that kind of stuff, all mixed all together. J.D. Vance is talking about, he says, well, I'm sure he's responding to Michael, and Michael says, what happened in Canada will be studied by many historians and economists as the prime example of self-destructing an otherwise prosperous nation after blindly following left ideology. And J.D. Vance says, while I'm sure the causes are complicated, no nation has leaned more into diversity is our strength. We don't need a melting pot. We have a salad bowl immigration insanity than Canada. It has the highest foreign-born share of the population in the entire G7, and its living standards have stagnated. True. And the government wants to take more of our money to redistribute it, I think, to foreigners in Gaza or Ukraine or somewhere else, anywhere else, just not Canada. J.D. Vance continues, he says, and with all due respect to my Canadian friends whose politics focus obsessively on the United States, your stagnating living standards have nothing to do with Donald Trump or whatever boogeyman the CBC tells you is to blame. The fault lies with your leadership elected by you. Yeah. I was talking with John Carpe, and he said that Donald Trump was thin-skinned and we have to deal with him and blah, 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 blah. And I said, it's kind of poor to blame Donald Trump when it's clearly Canadian bad policies that are driving all of these negative outcomes. And Canada is driving this idea that the, quote, relationship between Canada and the United States is over and will never be the same. And we have to pivot away from the United States and doing business with them to SAB and other places which don't make economic sense, especially the economic pain it's going to inflict. It's absolutely insane what's happening, and yet nobody seems to care, and they want to blame Trump. They want to blame something external, mainly because our politicians have no control over Trump, right? It's the same thing as being pro-Palestine or pro-Gaza or whatever it is. There's no losing in this position because you can't actually do a damn thing about it. So you pick up this mantle and you talk endlessly about this thing that's nonsense because you can't do anything about it. Well, very, very importantly ignoring all of the things that you could actually impact and do something for, but they're not going to do anything for anything because the plan that's rolling out is, well, I think to continue doing exactly what they've been doing, which is flooding our country with migrants, economic living standards stagnation, the value of our dollar dropping through spending and printing money and allowing more dollars to chase the same products, which causes inflation, and they know it. And not that they don't care, quite the opposite. They care a lot. And what they want to have happen is happening in spades. So they want to keep it going, right? That's why they care. Here's Table Salt, and she's highlighting the United States is responding to all of these economic pressures, not just in Canada, but in the United States too, in the United Kingdom too, with pressures on free speech and people in jail for free speech and migrants and other specially identified people having a different set of laws than everybody else. If you say something like BIPOC people deserve X, Y, Z, that's fine. But if you say any other identifiable group deserves X, Y, Z, specifically maybe Asian people or maybe white people, right? If you put "it's okay to be white" on a sheet of paper and then put that up in a university area, people will start saying a hate crime has been committed, and that is not true, right? Like that is absolutely bonkers. And so why the double standard here? And so people are pointing this out. The United States is saying you can't do this, right? And so people are doing this, and it is happening. Is this enough to turn it back? I don't know. Table Salt thinks so. She says, guys, we're so back. And the Department of State says U.S. officials will now scrutinize policies in Western nations that give leniency to migrant crime and human rights abuses that create two-tiered systems that prioritize migrants at the expense of their own citizens. The United States supports the sovereignty of our allies and calls on governments to constructively engage with the growing number of citizens concerned about mass migration. The United States stands ready to assist our allies in solving the global crisis of mass migration. Are we going to end mass migration by 2030? Do you think? I don't know. Or even by 2028? Because that would be interesting. That would be a thing that happened, right? Donald Trump ended the invasion of the United States by migrant caravans via the southern wall. Did anybody think in 2015 that Donald Trump would be the guy to end that? End it. Zero. There have been zero border crosses because of the wall and the measures he's put in place. This is not a hard problem to solve. Donald Trump, that idiot, did it easily, right? Within a month of him taking office and rolling up his sleeves and actually being unleashed because he's in his last term and can't run again, except for he's going to run again in 2028 because we're watching history unfold right now, I think. But do you think really, if that's the real position of the United States government, and I believe that is the position, if that is the position, then that's interesting, right? Do you think that's possible, right? Things that didn't look possible in 2015 have happened. Does it look impossible and it actually is possible? I don't know, right? Will Donald Trump be able to do it? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. Right? Globe and Mail is reporting Sweden offers Canada a chance to revive its near-dead defense aerospace industry. And this is putting lipstick on a pig, right? Making this pig look as great as it could possibly look. And it actually doesn't look very good. Ross says, hey, the aircraft are already out of date, yo. Newest gen of fighter aircraft are designed to work in swarms with drone attack aircraft and tie into all battle systems to give a unified coordinated attack. The Swedish jets are already out of date, right? So we're losing that Top Gun battle. We're losing that every day of the week, right? Here's CBC Watcher, and apparently the United States has taken notice of this foray into trade with Switzerland, I think it is, for these jets, and they're not so happy about it. So Canadian Newsletter says, our fighter jets, Canada's bargaining chip in trade deals. Canada began a review of its fighter jet deal with the United States after President Trump imposed tariffs. Now Sweden is back. Oh, I said Switzerland, but it's Sweden. Now Sweden is back with the sales pitch for its own jets. And here's an excerpt from the article highlighted by CBC Watcher. He says, the outcome of the Defense Department's military procurement audit will influence future trade talks, Pete Hoekstra, the U.S. ambassador, told an audience at the National Manufacturing Conference in Ottawa on Wednesday. We're actually waiting to see where the Canadian government is going to come out on this, Hoekstra said. The result of the F-35 fighter jet review seems to be catching the Trump administration's attention more than Canada's efforts to look for trading partners elsewhere. And so, there were people, the United States will probably not react well should Canada accept the offer, said Philip Legas, a professor at Carleton University in Ottawa who studies military procurement. There's an increasing expectation that American allies will buy American military capability, Professor Legas said. He raised a question that has been on the minds of other analysts reflecting on Canada's consideration of Sweden's pitch. Is it just being used as a bargaining chip? Maybe. Who knows? But we'll see. I just find it interesting. The United States will probably not react well should Canada accept that offer. I don't know what that means, but we're already in a weakened trade position. So if we weaken it further, I think that we will rue the day. It's not a good idea to weaken our position further with bad deals. Do you think this is good leverage? Do you think this is leverage that will make Donald Trump reasonable and think, oh yeah, those Canadians could certainly go get that deal elsewhere. I'll be a reasonable person. I don't think Carney's a good negotiator. I don't think Canada has acted in good faith. And so I'm biased though. But it doesn't look like we're acting in good faith to me. So it looks like if we could screw the Americans by pulling out of the F-35 deal, even if that meant we'd lose jobs, Carney would do it because he's ideologically hates Trump, dislikes Trump, despite him going to and saying that they have a good relationship, blah, 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 blah. He's on the side of the globalists and they want him removed, Trump removed. And so maybe Mark Carney has a good relationship. Maybe Brookfield and Trump have a good working relationship. Maybe Brookfield benefits from a relationship with Trump. But I think if Carney could screw Trump, he would. And I think that in attempting to try and find a way to screw Trump, Carney's screwing Canada. That's fundamentally what I feel like. He's like Ahab, and he's chasing the white whale, and everybody's like, listen, dude, we really, really need to go eat or something like that. We need to go back to the shore and do stuff. I've got to see my wife, we're done here, and we're not going to chase this white whale. You're insane. And he's going to just keep chasing that white whale of screwing Trump all the way to Canada's economic ruin. And I hope I'm wrong about that, but it seems like that. It's that kind of insanity that we're having to deal with. And I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I want Canada to be a prosperous place to be because where else do you go, right? Like Cheryl says, entering the USMCA review, does Mexico have the upper hand? Yes. Yep, sure do. Although that Shine Bomb thing, is the Mexican government still standing? Did the youth just walk away from the presidential palace? Everything's fine now? Everything's cool? We're just talking trade in Mexico? I haven't heard anything, so I don't know. CBC Watcher from 3 hours ago says Mexico is now the world's top buyer of U.S. goods, according to data released by the U.S. government on Wednesday, outpacing Canada for the first time in nearly 30 years. So, yeah, they're in a position, and I think Trump likes dealing with them better than Canada. So they're in a better position than Canada, and we'll see how the USMCA trade deal goes, renegotiation goes. If it doesn't go well, it could have a big impact on Canada. And I don't want to fearmonger or anything like that, but like a lot of our trade goes through that trade deal. And if that trade deal collapses, a depression, you'd be hoping for a depression because what will happen to Canada is far worse than that. National Post is reporting the cost of the federal bureaucracy jumped 80% over the last 10 years. That's bad, right? Like if your operating costs go up that high and all of the other economic metrics, half the growth, twice the debt, all of the budget metrics are all just terrible. That doesn't send good indicators. It sends very bad indicators. You can't sustain this kind of negative downturn for a long time. And yet everybody's saying everything's great. Everything's perfect. And I mean, I can't believe them because, well, they're lying liars, but people do seem to believe them. And we appear to just be rolling on. We're just going to carry on with this and we're going to close our eyes and put our elbows up, right? Like, it's ridiculous. And yet 80%, that's not a red flag, right? Like imagine if you owned a business and you're like, you have these profit margins and so on and so forth. And your projections are that everything's going to stay pretty much the same. And then somebody comes in and says, well, we got to raise the bureaucracy cost 80% over the next 10 years. What's that going to do to you? That's insane. That's a huge amount of overhead. That's like buying lots of buildings, right? Like, sure, the buildings have inherent value, but they also have an inherent maintenance costs, right? Like there's lots of overhead in talent as well. And having all of this talent, you've also got retirement packages and all of the rest. So it's not just the talent now, it's the talent that you have to maintain after they're retired as well. And there's all sorts of money that goes into that. And people have done studies. I don't have any studies off the top of my head here, but the cost of maintaining the government when you have a bureaucracy that is 80% bigger, well, it's going to at least be 80% bigger, right? And what level of bureaucracy is this? Are we talking about 80% of the upper management? Because upper management's making, $400,000 plus a year, right? Some people are making $100,000 plus a year as middle management, right? And like these are bureaucrats, middle managers who are putting together, difficult things like gender studies for construction sites and stuff like that, making sure that there's no evil construction workers who are going to do evil things to the community or something, right? Like it's a ridiculous, the government stands up this garbage in order to hire crony insiders maybe. And the net cost is, or the net outcome is, we have an 80% increased bureaucracy with a huge paycheck, huge bill for the taxpayer attached. And that's less than ideal, right? That's not good. That's not good money management. That's not good business management. That's not good government management. Bruce says he's responding to Melissa. Melissa says Canada just committed $1 billion for disasters in other countries at the G20 in South Africa. So here's another $1 billion spent on November 21st. We could just, we're going to the strip club and we're making it rain, baby. That's what we're doing. That's what Canada does at COPs and other G20 conferences. Just spends money that we don't have. Bruce says, there you have it, folks. Money we have to borrow is once again being thrown around like around the globe like confetti. Excuse me. $1 billion to fight infectious diseases around the world. I wonder how much of that money Bill Gates, Pfizer, GSK, and Moderna will pocket. A lot. CTV News says Canada cuts back spending on fighting infectious diseases at G20. So Bruce is upset that we're spending $1 billion, and the G20 people are upset that we are reducing the amount that we are spending over the next 3 years down from 1.21 billion down to 1 billion. So in 2022 to 25, it was 1.21. Now it's 1.02, and that people are upset. They're like, listen, we can't do this. This is intolerable. How dare you reduce the funding for our G20? We shouldn't be funding any of it. I don't know what we get. It doesn't seem like we're getting anything good for any of these contributions, and I think that we should stop them because it seems like we could spend that money in Canada and actually have something that makes sense, contributions that make sense. Here is Michael Kovrig, and here is his kind of synopsis from National Post. I think this is just a clip of a longer interview, but he's talking about his time in China and his time detained and how he was arrested and how hard it's been on his family. And my question is, like, why did they both have Chinese handlers the last time we saw them in public during that when Hunka or whatever his name was in the legislature? Didn't those guys show up in that context? They were invited for some reason. I can't remember why they were invited, but they were invited and they showed up, and each one had an Asian lady who was a very nice looking Asian lady on their arm. And I was making jokes about them dating Asians after spending so much time in like an Asian gulag, Chinese gulag, a very nice Chinese prison. And clearly, I mean, the ladies were nice in the Chinese prison these guys were hanging out with, I guess, maybe, right? Or maybe they just met these Chinese ladies when they got back to Canada and they were like, hey, I'm going to this special event in the House of Commons. I thought you'd like to come. I just want to know who those people are, but that's not covered in this little interview that I saw here. But here it is. It's a minute long. Here we go.
I was detained by state security officers when I was coming back from dinner, and they abducted me and held me hostage for 1,019 days until finally negotiations led to the release of Meng Wanzhou through a deferred prosecution agreement, and Michael Spavor and I were released at exactly the same time and flew home crossing the Pacific just as she did. In between, I spent about nearly 6 months in solitary confinement, being relentlessly interrogated, and then another 2 years in a detention center, confined to a single cell. It was a grueling ordeal, not just for me, but for my family. And frankly, it's something I've spent the last few years, as has my family, recovering from. Now we're all doing pretty well, but it hasn't been an easy journey. An experience like that gives you a lot of trauma and a lot of heavy things to carry. But I've also learned a lot from that experience, including about China, as well as how to manage my own mind.
So there's more to that interview if you're interested. I think the link is there. It should be in the description. So check that out. It's interesting. I've got a Chrystia Freeland update, and then I've got to say goodbye to the stream. Peter says, if I get this right, Chrystia Freeland is going to be a CEO in the United Kingdom while remaining an MP and special envoy to Ukraine. No issues here, right? Freeland is expected to work out of the United Kingdom for her new role as Rhodes Trust CEO. So you can't be an MP for Canada in her riding and also live in the United Kingdom. Right? So I was wondering how they were going to make this all work. It's explained slightly in this article, but this is a Globe and Mail article. Take it all with a grain of salt because this is the internet. Chrystia Freeland is taking over the leadership of the organization that provides the venerable Rhodes Scholarship in a move that may set the stage for life after politics. The former Deputy Prime Minister, who is now a Canadian Special Envoy for the reconstruction of Ukraine, will become the Chief Executive Officer of the Rhodes Trust based in Britain. It's a full-time position, and it's based in the UK, in Oxford, UK. Rhodes Trust spokesperson Babette Littlemore said in an email Thursday. However, Ms. Littlemore said some aspects of the position that Ms. Freeland is taking, which begins next July, are still being worked out. Ms. Freeland remains the Liberal MP for the Toronto riding of University Rosedale and lives in Toronto with her husband and children. Now, I don't know if that means right now she is currently until July. Maybe, right? But also, maybe she's just going to stay on as all of these things. She did not comment on Thursday on her next steps. Those sources close to Ms. Freeland said that she wants to remain the special envoy. The Globe and Mail is not naming the sources who are not authorized to speak publicly on her behalf. The Prime Minister's office did not provide any comment on Thursday to questions about Ms. Freeland's future as the envoy. Prime Minister Carney touted Ms. Freeland's professional credentials for the envoy role when he announced her appointment in mid-September as Ms. Freeland left her cabinet posts of transport and internal trade. So, I don't know, man. If she goes to Oxford and maintains her MP position, like if she goes to Oxford without stepping down, that's not good. But nobody will be allowed to point it out because, well, that's a terrorism, right? So, like, sorry about your luck. Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Oh, this is an interesting story too. This is about MAID being offered to RCMP officers. Okay, we'll do this and then I'll say goodbye to the stream. Greg is responding to this. He says, RCMP Veterans Association is promoting assisted suicide to veterans a week after Remembrance Day. This is so unspeakably evil and dishonorable. The people making these decisions are traitors who hate Canada. Chris says, this is disgusting. Not only did the RCMP send out an email to vets inviting them to an information session on medical suicide, but the session is being held at a church. Yikes, right? And so here's part of the email, and RCMP Veterans Association Nova Scotia Division, care of Communication Director, and it says the Nova Scotia RCMP Veterans Association Support and Advocacy Committee wishes to share this invitation with the membership and all interested. The Nova Scotia RCMP Veterans Association has been advised of an opportunity for the membership to attend a free presentation that may interest many. No registration is required. Accessible location with parking. Details as follows. St. John's, the Evangelical Church, is hosting a guest speaker on medical assistance in dying. It will be open to the public at no cost. Please share this information with others who may also be interested. So the RCMP are looking for MAID suspects. So that's MAID, like they're fishing for customers fundamentally, right? And that's not so good. Like that's worse than